Hey everybody, welcome back to Conscientious Omnivore. My name is Pal. Going to be doing another, hopefully quick live stream, although I've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Yeah, thanks everybody for being on. Going to be going through a lot of stuff pretty quick here, so I'm going to just jump right into it. If anybody's on in the chat, just let me know if you guys can hear everything okay, and hopefully everybody sees everything okay, and then let me know if it's not the case. So let's just jump into it. I'm going to be talking about this. So if anybody's on Twitter and you're not following Dave the Herbie, definitely check him out. Good people. Really great posts about veganism and the ethics, especially of veganism. Follow him. Great guy. But anyway, he posted this opinion piece written by Joanna Blythman. You may remember her. I'll get to it at the end, kind of, if you don't know who she is. But basically, it's a response to the Tesco ad that I've already mentioned a couple of times now in the previous live streams recently, where Tesco ran an ad where there's a little girl and she tells her dad that she doesn't want to eat animals anymore. And then he goes out and changes the family recipe to not have, meat-based sausages in there, and he puts in like a plant-based sausage instead. And yeah, basically the article is just, it is a true piece of work. Like, I don't remember the last time I've ever read something so utterly, completely wrong about like everything. Like, I'm not even sure if there's any true thing in the entire article. Like, it's just one lie stacked on top of another. The entire thing is just completely incorrect, and I'm going to go through why. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. Hopefully everybody finds it interesting. Basically, Joanna Blythman wrote this, and so this is her thing. She says, unlike Greta Thunberg, I believe parents should tell their children what to do, not the other way around. Now, I'm going to go through this kind of line by line and give my response to this. She's basically writing this, so she says right here, I'm no script writer, but I've had to go at rewriting Tesco's Daddy, I don't want to eat meat anymore advert as follows. So let me just go sentence by sentence here. Her first thing is immediately, just extremely arrogant. As a parent myself, and if anybody's watching, if you're a parent, I would hope that anybody who considers themselves to be a good parent or to want to be a good parent, I would think that you would know, and I certainly feel this way, that you can certainly learn tons of stuff from your parents. That's number one. From your kids. That you can learn tons of stuff from your kids. I learn things from my kids all the time. And they're much younger than Greta. Greta's 16 or 17 or however old she is. I think she's 16. And if I just think back to some of the things that I learned when I was 16, I definitely was able to convince and persuade my parents on certain things. And for the better, honestly. And if anybody doesn't have that kind of feeling, that by the time you're a mid-teen, that you can at least discuss things and talk to your parents, and hopefully that they are open-minded and willing to listen to you, like, that's a sign of a really bad relationship. Like, I wouldn't want a parent that wouldn't listen to me and tells me what to do, when they're 16. Now, she's obviously likening this to the little girl in the ad. The little girl in the ad is obviously not 16. She's much younger, I would imagine, just based on like looking at the ad. But anyway, I just think this really shows the arrogance of this person, Joanna, writing this. So that's like number one. Number two, she's talking about the ad, Daddy, I don't want to eat meat anymore advert. That in and of itself is already kind of funny, because the ad was originally, I don't want to eat animals. And the meat lobby and the farmers unions and all these other kind of like suppliers to Tesco pressured them into changing the ad. So they like did a voiceover and they changed it to, I don't want to eat meat anymore, instead of saying, I don't want to eat animals anymore. They're so incredibly misguided that they think that somehow by not pointing out that the meat comes from animals, that's somehow less, I don't know what the right word for this is, but like less antagonistic, or less, less likely to trigger people into thinking like, oh geez, yeah, I am eating animals, when they are eating meat. So yeah, they're just basically changed the ad to be a euphemism instead of what it actually is in reality. So it's like that already gives you kind of the context of who this person is. So here's what she would reply if she were the dad in the ad. That's what she's saying. Darling, here's why we're not going to do that. You want to grow up to be a healthy and maybe have babies of your own. Well, meat gives you the protein. Okay, let me just stop right there. So basically, you want to grow up to be healthy and maybe have babies of your own. I don't know if she doesn't have like an editor, or she just doesn't understand like grammar, but like that's not even a correct sentence. I think what she meant was to grow up to be a healthy mom, or a healthy lady, or a healthy adult, or a healthy human. I don't know, a healthy something. There's like a word missing there. So that alone is kind of funny. But yeah, so it's fear mongering. Like, who would do this to their own kid? To be like this is the response you give to somebody. Like, just like, we're not going to do that. There's no discussion. It's like, we're not going to do that. That's like done. And then you want to be healthy and maybe have babies of your own. It's like pretty bad that the immediate thing is this fear and like scare tactic. That's how she goes in like immediately. So then, well, meat gives you the protein, vitamins, and amino acids to do that. It's really funny because protein is comprised of certain amino acids, or I guess protein has certain amino acids. It's really funny that she lists it twice. So it's like, where do you get your protein? Where do you get your amino acids? It's really funny. So now we're going to just jump into here. Where do you get your protein? If anybody is not sure, all plants have all the amino acids that are essential and that we need. You can get all of the amino acids that you need from plants. All plants have all of the essential amino acids. It is a common misconception that certain plants don't have all of the amino acids that you need, or that some of them are incomplete, so meaning they lack one or the other. That's actually completely not true. All plants have all of them. They do have them in differing amounts. So certain amino acids are higher in certain plants than in others, whereas in meat, what you have is you have a roughly 1-to-1 distribution, or whatever ratio, of the amino acids. So they're very similar in meat, like pretty much they're all equal. Whereas in like certain plant foods, you might have one amino acid that's really high in one type of food, and another amino acid might be a little low, and then a different type of food might be really high in the one that this one is low in, and low in the other one that the other thing is high in. And there is a misconception that you have to combine and be very careful and plan out everything to make sure you can get enough protein in total, and also that you can get enough all of the amino acids that you require. I encourage anybody who's not sure about this and doesn't believe me, go check out these studies. I'm going to have the links as usual in the comments afterward. This is a paper that was put together specifically to address the idea that plant proteins aren't good or usable, or they're not absorbable, or they're not whatever. And so this is it. This short review ends with a list of series of myths and realities concerning the relationship between plant protein and human nutrition, and a list of some nutritional issues of concern to the health professional and informed consumer. Hey guys, welcome. Thank you. I am doing well. Juturu. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. And hey Jen, plants have toxins and anti-nutrients. Yeah. That's the other claim. So if you guys look at this, there is a wonderful little chart a long time ago. It's like one of my first videos, like 300 videos ago, that I did. I covered and I used this little chart in my excuses about why people don't want to go vegan. But basically here, hopefully everybody can see it on the screen. There is a left side, which is the myth column, and then there's the reality column on the right-hand side. But basically, they're saying plant proteins are incomplete, i.e. they lack specific amino acids. The reality is that usual dietary combinations of proteins are complete. Specific food protein may be low in specific amino acids, just like I said. Number 2, plant proteins are not as good as animal proteins. The reality is actually that quality depends on the source and dietary mixture of plant proteins. It can be equivalent to high-quality animal proteins. Number 3 is that the proteins from different plant foods must be consumed together in the same meal to achieve high nutritional value. The reality is no, they do not. The proteins do not need to be consumed at the same time. To balance over a day is of greater importance. Number 4 is that animal bioassay procedures are satisfactory indexes of the human nutritional value of food proteins. This actually refers to tests that they did. If you read the whole study, it refers to tests that they did on, say, like rats, and they looked at like how well they absorb certain types of amino acids from certain types of plant proteins, and then they extrapolated that to humans. But then when they actually tested it in humans, they got wildly different results. And so here the reality is, number 4, animal bioassay procedures can be useful, but they may underestimate the plant protein nutritional quality for humans. So humans can digest the plant protein much better than the rats. Number 5, plant proteins are not well digested. The reality is that the digestibility can vary according to source and food preparation. Digestibility can be high. Number 6, plant proteins alone are not sufficient to achieve an adequate diet protein intake. The reality is that the intakes and balance of intakes of indispensable amino acids and nitrogen are crucial and can be adequately met from plant and animal sources. Number 7 is plant proteins are imbalanced, and this limits their nutritional value. The reality is actually that there is no evidence that amino acid imbalances per se are important. Possible imbalances can be created by inappropriate amino acid supplementation, but this is not a practical problem. If you guys read through the study, you'll actually see that it is pretty much impossible to not get enough protein if you're getting enough calories. There is another wonderful little write-up. I'll have the link to this as well, as usual. And this is written by Jeff Novick. This was actually written quite a while ago, so it was written in 2003 and appeared in Health Science and Healthy Times. So check this out. It talks about where this whole misconception about protein and this protein myth and the protein combining and the plant protein combining, where it all came from. I'm not going to go through it now because I really do want to get through a lot of stuff and I don't want to hold everybody up with this, but definitely check it out. In a nutshell, it came from somebody who is not a nutritionist, not a scientist. She wrote a book in 1971. She incorrectly assumed that you would have to do this protein complementing, where you eat, like, say, rice and beans together to get the complete protein and blah, blah, blah. And then it was later, shown to her that that's actually incorrect. In subsequent editions of this lady's book, she corrected it, she retracted her statement, and she even said that in trying to end one myth, this unsolvable inevitability of world hunger, she created a second one, the myth of the need for protein complementing. So in later editions, she basically said, yeah, it's completely wrong, but yet people still refer to it. And in this article, they actually point out several publications and things that actually posted this information incorrectly. And even after they were pointed out by legitimate doctors that it's wrong, the publications refused to update and correct the information. And they also refer to some doctors, books and nutrition books and stuff that incorrectly state the same thing when this is actually completely false. So it's just hilarious. Jotura says Logan's channel's back. Yes, I did see that last night, and I did get word back from him as well. So everything's cool. Happy to see his channel back. Yeah, Jen, we're all protein deficient. Exactly. In 4 years, I haven't had enough protein apparently. So anyway, let's jump back to her comment. So she's got the protein and the amino acids. I feel like I've covered that enough. She also talks about the vitamins. And if you guys have maybe seen this, hopefully everybody who's a vegan has probably seen it because you've been asked a million times about this. But if you're not vegan and you're watching this, please, go look up the position of the American Dietetic Association. They have put out a statement or an abstract study or whatever, a collective, stance on vegan diets and nutrition. And here it is. It is the position of the American Dietetic Association that appropriately planned vegetarian diets, including total vegetarian or vegan diets, are healthful, nutritionally adequate, and may provide health benefits in the prevention and treatment of certain diseases. Well-planned vegetarian diets are appropriate for individuals during all stages of the life cycle, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, and adolescence, and for athletes. So basically, no matter when you are in your life, no matter what you're doing, you can be vegan if you want, and as long as you're, planning out your meals correctly, you're going to be fine. And basically, they are saying you want to make sure you have enough nutrients and whatever, but it is certainly possible and it's fine. Now, going back to her next thing, she basically says, here we go. You won't get all that information, nutrition otherwise. Again, completely false. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys, the American Dietetics Association, they've been renamed. They are now called the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. But as you can see here, they are the largest organization of food and nutrition professionals, I believe in the world actually. They have over 100,000 credentialed practitioners represented in that association. So they've been around since 1917, so 102 years, and you can just see that like it's a legit organization. This is not one person's opinion, and they've put out this statement. This is very, very obvious that this Joanna's claim is completely false. So she's basically saying you won't get all that important nutrition otherwise. False. And it wouldn't be good for you or your baby. Again, false. The only other way to prevent that would be for you to swallow pills every day. You don't fancy that, do you? And then the child shakes their head. So again, this resorting to kind of this like, well, you have to take a supplement for like B12 or something else, maybe zinc or whatever other nutrient of concern there might be. This is a really ridiculous claim, especially with the usual ones that people come with when they say like vegans have to supplement with B12. Let's talk about B12 because that is usually the main concern. I want to show you guys this study. This looked at vitamin B12 deficiency, and the part that I highlighted here, sorry, it got gray, it's hard to read it that way. Here we go. In large surveys in the United States and the United Kingdom, roughly 6% of those aged 60 years or older are vitamin B12 deficient. Plasma vitamin B12 of lower than 148, I think that's picomoles per liter, with the prevalence of deficiency increasing with age. Closer to 20% have marginal status of plasma vitamin B12. So this is kind of ridiculous when you think about how few vegans there are right now in the world, and how high the prevalence is of either outright deficiency or marginal status of B12. What this means is that this is not a vegan problem. There are tons and tons of people out there, literally probably millions of people that are either outright deficient in B12 or marginally deficient in B12, and they are not vegan. They need to be supplementing as well. Is Joanna going to tell these people that they shouldn't, take a B12 supplement because it's unnatural, because they have to swallow a pill? It's ridiculous. They're appealing to something that is sort of like this appeal to nature or a natural fallacy, that because it's unnatural to supplement with B12, then therefore it's bad. The thing that they overlook is that B12 is not something that comes from the animals directly. It is coming from the bacteria in the soil. The animals get it. Some animals get it because they produce it in their gut. They have like some bacteria that actually produces it, and but for the most part, the animals that people are eating, they are being supplemented with vitamin B12. There is a pretty in-depth article here that I recommend people check it out. The hype about B12 and veganism. It's very thorough, has annotations and like whatever. One of the things they claim here is that 90% of the B12 supplements produced in the world are fed to livestock. And when I've actually tried to find the original source of this, because when you go to this link, it still doesn't actually give you the, like, where is this figure coming from? But I've seen people debating this, and actually most people that look at the actual stats say that it's more than 90% actually goes to livestock, because so much is fed to livestock, and so little is actually required for human health, that if you look at what's actually produced, and just even factor in that, like, even if every person on Earth was actually taking it, it would still be less than the 10% that's produced. So I would say that this is probably a correct statistic, or even it's underestimated. So even more than 90% are being fed to livestock. It's crazy. And then they talk about other studies that show vitamin B12 deficiency in other groups of people. And they recommend that, yes, everybody take a B12 supplement, because we live in a world now where everything's sterilized. We're not drinking from streams. We're not drinking from pond water. We're not drinking from those sources of groundwater that would potentially have had B12 in the past. And even if you're eating animal products, it's not a good way to get B12. There's a quote here from Dr. Greger from nutritionfacts.org, where they say to get 47 micrograms of B12 from eggs, because the absorption is so low, we'd have to literally eat hundreds of scrambled eggs a day, 200 to 400 eggs a day. So it's like totally impossible. You're not going to, get that. And then he says, yeah, if you got all your B12 from scrambled eggs, you'd consume 69,000 milligrams of cholesterol, practically your entire year's worth of, cholesterol in it every day. Now, obviously, I don't think anybody can even physically eat 200 eggs. It's pretty ridiculous. But it just goes to show you that not all animal food sources are good sources of vitamin B12 anyway. And again, people can have absorption issues. Sorry, my throat's kind of bothering me, and my lips are dry. So you can have all these problems even as a meat eater. It has nothing to do with veganism, and it's not a good reason for to be used as something to tell this little girl that she shouldn't be, that she should keep eating animals because she doesn't want to take a B12 supplement. Jen says, I take a sublingual once a week compared to how many medications some people aren't. I'll take the B12. Exactly. And it's the only supplement I take, for example. I mean, I know a lot of people will say other things like, DHA or some other stuff. Like, there are vegan sources for all these things, and we do not require the killing and the torture of these other animals, these sentient beings that feel pain and fear just like us. So, jumping back in, skipping ahead. I know you don't want to be mean to animals, but most cows, sheep, deer, goats, pigs, and chickens wouldn't be alive in the first place if no one wanted to eat them. Now, this is just a preposterous reason. I mean, if you change this to any other context, it would never be considered justifiable. If you had a group of people that are enslaved and, you would not be able to use this in an ethical argument that, like, well, look, I mean, those slaves wouldn't even be alive if I wasn't keeping them to be slaves and, like, working in the fields and picking the cotton. So, like, what? You want to get rid of the black people? Like, it's like you would be considered like a psychopath for saying something like this. And the only difference is that she's just changing it from one animal to another. So from a human to a non-human animal. And it's completely illogical. It makes no sense. So it's just like it's so ignorant. It's laughable. I mean, I just don't even know. Okay, moving on. All the little animals, like mice and worms that live in fields, are best friends with the bigger animals that we eat. It's like, okay, great reasoning. Okay, yeah. Together they create a lovely world for all the busy bees that pollinate our crops. This doesn't even make sense. It's like incoherent rambling. Like, I mean, I think she's trying to make it be some kind of like almost like a kid-friendly story explanation of kind of like the circle of life or something like that. But like it doesn't even follow from like one thing to the next. It's like she's stating kind of like random weird things that like don't even like lead to anything. They're just like this like cute little, or an attempt to be cute. It's like it's so stupid. Like, I don't say it lightly, but like, this lady is either the worst like paid shill that I've ever come across in my like vegan activism so far, or she's just like incredibly misinformed. I mean, like I don't know, like I don't know. I don't want to like call into question her intelligence, but like this is just beyond ridiculous. If we dug up their fields and sprayed them with nasty pesticides to grow more plant foods, the mice and their mates would be chopped up by tractors or poisoned, the bees would die, and the gas released from digging up the grass would make our planet even hotter. Okay, so this is going back to the classic, argument like the carnivore crowd makes, these like keto people make, that you could eat the one cow in the year and, tail to nose, and then you would result in less animal deaths than the vegan who's eating bread because of the grains and the combines and the whatever. And it's like the most tired argument. This lady in this article seems to want to tick every single like miserable, stupid, uninformed excuse against veganism that I've come across so far. It's like she wants to include every single thing in here possible. So let's debunk this one too. If you guys look at, where is it? There is a kind of somewhat common picture that's gone around. This is I'm going to try to zoom in so you guys can see it a little easier. Hopefully people can see that. This is the number of animals killed to produce 1 million calories in 8 food categories. And as you can see, grains are actually the lowest category. This is again for the million calories, which is I think what they estimate like an average, 2,000 calories a day kind of person needs for the course of a year. So if you break it all down, if you look, chicken, eggs, beef, pork, milk, everything is way higher than the lowest thing, which is grains. Fruits is still really low, vegetables is still really low, and then you get all the animal products way above and beyond. So even the closest thing, like vegetables, is still like half of what milk is. And it's like what is that, like a sixth of what pork is, or less than a sixth. So, you know, you just look at this and you realize that it's just false. And then you also have to kind of look at like all these carnivore clowns that are like out there like suggesting this. They all refer to the exact same study, which has been debunked a million times by people. So I'm not going to go into like the specifics, but if anybody wants to see like the specifics, check out this link. I'll have, again, all the links in the comments after. This was put together in response to this particular study that I'm referring to, that all these, you know, carnivore, anti-vegan people like to cite. Here it is. This is the summary. In 2003, there was an article in the Journal of Agriculture and Environmental Ethics. Stephen Davis advanced the argument that fewer animals would be harmed if we consumed a diet containing large herbivores, namely cattle, fed on pasture, than if we consumed a vegan diet. Based on his calculation that more wild animals would be killed in crop harvesting than in producing food from a ruminant pasture forage system. And then there was another guy, Gavrik Matheny, identified a crucial error in Davis's calculation. It assumed that the equal amounts of land will produce equal amounts of food from crops or from animals on pasture. In fact, an amount of land will produce much more food when used to grow crops for direct human consumption than when used to raise cattle. I've covered this in many videos before. Go check out some of my older videos on this topic. But it's like incredibly inefficient to feed animals that you then kill and eat. It's usually on the order of like anywhere from like 6 times more inefficient to maybe up to 10 times more inefficient, depending on the animal, depending on what you're doing. I mean, it's ridiculous how much waste there is. So yeah, it's provided it is suitable for growing crops. I've talked about that too, that like, you know, even this claim that like, oh, but some land is only good for grazing animals. Usually if you stopped grazing the animals, the land would rewild itself, and other, you know, ecosystems would kind of start to thrive and flourish. Trees would grow in, shade would produce, you know, habitat for other types of plants and vegetation. I've talked about permaculture solutions like by Sepp Holzer, where he went to really, really bad lands in the Scottish Highlands and cultivated wonderful producing gardens using swales and hugels and, you know, mounds and all these kinds of things. There are many, many solutions that are very, very you know, eco-friendly, low water usage. You don't have to irrigate stuff. Like, you can do mulching. You can do a whole bunch of stuff. These claims are just beyond ridiculous. So this gets really nitty-gritty. It starts talking about the calculations and all this kind of stuff, and how that article is completely false and wrong. Check it out if you're interested. There are notes for all the stuff that the guy is pointing out. And if the next time you run into somebody telling you that, like, yeah, this one cow is less killed than the grain, please do send them this picture and the other article, and yeah, then you'll be all set. Okay, now back to the article. Her father would then reassure her honestly. I want to stop here right away, this honestly part. I really believe this is actually kind of a Freudian slip on her part. I think she knows that the whole rest of what she's said here has been anything but honest. I think it's kind of a Freudian slip on her part, that she is kind of admitting that the previous stuff has just been completely dishonest. But anyway, that's just my own kind of 2 cents on that. Her father would then reassure her honestly that the family only buys meat that comes from contented, grass-fed, or organic animals that had a nice life until they were killed. I mean, isn't this the classic claim that every single person who is an anti-vegan, or even just a non-vegan arguing with a vegan, says? It's like, as soon as you talk to anybody, they only buy organic, they only buy grass-fed. You know, if everybody is doing this, who the heck is buying the 90 whatever % of factory farmed animals that are out there? Because that is the 90 whatever % of all animal products are produced by factory farms. You can look this up. It's not you know, an unsubstantiated claim. Look at the statistics. Factory farms account for like 90+% of all of the animal products produced. So who the heck is buying all that stuff if everybody's buying grass-fed and organic and free range and all this kind of wonderful stuff? Because, I mean, this is just so outright false. Then he'd send his would-be vegan off to play or do homework, so she developed a hearty appetite while he cooked dinner. Something meaty that starts with the saliva flowing. Roast lamb, cauliflower cheese with crispy bacon. Okay, before we get into the bacon and the cancer-causing effects of that, let's just jump back here to this sentence here about the only buys meat that comes from contented, this is again the happy, grass-fed, organic animals. If you look, in the news, pretty much almost every week, it seems like there is a new case of animal abuse, animal cruelty happening in the industry all over. Every country, you can find news events probably every couple weeks at the most, sometimes every couple days, about the latest scandal, about the latest, animals that are being mistreated or abused or left in, bad conditions or sick or, whatever. And I want to point out, I know a lot of my viewers are in the U.S. Whole Foods is kind of considered one of the leading, I guess kind of like high welfare standards kind of places. And it wasn't just but a few years ago when they were being sued because it was shown that many of their farms that they claim have this like high humane welfare standard were engaged in all sorts of abuses of the animals and really poor welfare and sick animals and dying animals and starving animals and all this kind of stuff. And PETA actually sued them. This article talks about the lawsuit that they launched because what they said is, the group alleges that the grocery chain's attempts to monitor how its suppliers treat their animals are a sham and that its customers are paying for it. So what was pointed out is that basically Whole Foods has this 5-step program where step 1 is the lowest rating for suppliers who want to be certified, no cages, no crates, no crowding. Step 5 plus is the highest, animal-centered, entire life on same farm with extensive outdoor access, blah, blah, blah. And what they found is that right here, the standards is a sham because it occurs infrequently and the violation of the standards do not cause loss of certification. Standards that are not actually enforced create a false impression of ensuring a more humanely treated, higher quality animal product when in fact they ensure no such thing. It turned out that they only go out every 15 months. So here it is. Whole Foods audits suppliers just once every 15 months, that the violators do not face repercussions, and that the standards barely exceed common industry practices, and that Whole Foods extracts a premium from customers under false advertising. It is the classic case of making people pay extra money so that they can have a clear conscience. You're being a sucker, basically. You're being lied to. You think you're paying extra for the organic, free range, whatever, grass fed, whatever, and then it turns out that when you go look at the actual conditions, they're in maybe a sliver better condition than all the other rest of the similarly factory farmed animals, but in reality, when you look at it, it's no better. And you're just paying extra, and people think I paid more, therefore it's better for the animal, and it's had a happy life, and it's contented. And no, they're not. These are some of the farms that they had in their highest rating thing. The pigs are basically stepping over each other. They have no space. This is free range, and this is what is considered free range. So check out this article, and then there were many other ones as well. There was the direct action people when they went and made videotape recordings of the turkey farm that had the highest rating from Whole Foods and showed all sorts of criminal abuses and breaking of even just the basic animal welfare laws, not to mention Whole Foods' own kind of standards. There are still legal ramifications from this action that they took when they went and filmed this, and that's still ongoing. I've talked about that in some live streams before. But this article, talks about it again, and it shows that their highest rated farms had, these kinds of problems. And it's just insane that people think that, this is okay. And they're only checking these farms once every 15 months. So it's roughly a year and a half goes by, and then they check, and even if the farm fails the test, they still don't lose the certification. So what good is it? It's obviously a marketing scam. And then for anybody who says well, but that's the U.S. and everything's terrible there, it's not like that in my country, blah, blah, blah. Well, we have the red tractor scheme in the U.K., and they were criticized because they do only 1 in 1,000 inspections as unannounced. So basically, the inspections that they do are announced. For the 999 out of 1,000 are announced. So, if you're an animal farmer who's abusing the heck out of your animals and doing terrible, mean stuff and treating them terribly, but then you have to keep your red tractor certification so that the customers think that you're doing such a nice, lovely job, they will literally tell you 999 times out of 1,000 that they're going to come and check you on, say, Wednesday next week. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to clear out all the dead animals. You're going to tell all your people, you better not hit the animals next week because the inspector's coming on Wednesday. You can beat the crap out of them on Tuesday and Thursday, but you can't do it on Wednesday because that's when they're coming. Everybody on their best behavior. Everybody keep everything clean, and that's how it works. And then people pay extra money for this, and that's what happens. So if anybody wants to believe this Joanna Blythman that they're all contented and happy and whatever, and then they had a nice life, it's like that's completely false. Even under the best conditions, these animals are not having a nice life. And yeah, I know that somebody's watching this and thinking, but I know the farm that I buy my from, and they're so nice and they scratch the pigs' bellies and whatever. Yeah, that is probably 1 out of 1,000,000 or less that has that kind of a life. And even those are sent to the same slaughterhouse and suffer the same horrific, terrible, inhumane death that all of the other animals suffer. And it's funny that Joanna in her little skit here doesn't even talk about how they're killed. So it's just this little, okay, they're killed, and then send her off, and tell her to do her homework. But if anybody wants to see, I'm sorry for this image, it's very horrific. I'm not going to scroll through this article because there's just like a bunch of disturbing pictures and video. This is probably the least disturbing of them all. But basically it's a very good write-up, very thorough, and everything's annotated, has tons of information about abuses that are happening in Spain and Mexico. But they do refer to things that are documented in other places, in Europe, in the U.S., basically all over the world. It is not different anywhere you go. That's the main point that I want to make here. It's not better in your country. I don't know where your country is. I don't know where you're watching from, but it's not better there either. When you treat animals like commodities, when you treat them like, just a piece of meat waiting to go on a plate, nobody cares about the animals. These laws are only written to appease the minds of the consumer, to appease the guilty conscience that they all feel, because they know when they look at these images that they feel guilty, that they know that this animal is suffering, and they know that it's afraid, and it knows what's happening. It can smell the blood. It can hear the cries of its family and friends, and that's exactly what is happening. So this lady is just like seriously deluded. There are lots of really good references in this article, so check this one out if anybody's interested. One of them is this one. I believe I covered this in a live stream once before already, but I'm not sure. This one looked at stunning rates to see how effective they were. Specifically, they looked at cows, different cattle, so bulls and other cattle. So here it is: 306 cows, 58 steers, and 49 calves. And in the study, what they found was 12.5%, so 16.7% of the bulls compared with 6.5% of the other cattle were incorrectly stunned. So inadequate stunning occurred in 12.5%. That's a huge thing. I mean, that's getting very close to 1 in 6. I've seen other studies that suggest it could be even higher than that. I've seen in certain places as high as 30% could be ineffective. Some, even in the best cases, I've seen like 5%. Really, like what's happening is these operations are done to be profitable. And I've talked about it in live streams as well, that like even now the Trump administration in the U.S. Allowed changes so that they could increase the line speed on slaughterhouses. And the Obama administration had previously increased the line speed allowance for chickens and I forget what else. I think it was chickens and pigs, and now it's being allowed for cattle as well. So with the drive to make more money, it just gets sloppier and sloppier and worse, and these numbers just keep going higher. And if you if you look at other animals, it's even worse than this. So if you look at poultry, it's incredibly inefficient, or ineffective, I should say. That's the right word. It's ineffective. This article came out last year. I think it was 2018. Yeah, 2018. And what they found was the year before they said 180 million birds were slaughtered without effective stunning. So they talk about some of the reasons are that religious exemptions are in place, so that certain halal and kosher standards don't allow for stunning of the animals, and they have a huge number of animals that are killed under those religious rights exemptions. But that's not all of them. Is basically they're also looking at things like the stunning in the water bath. The electric water bath isn't working, and then the birds are going fully conscious of having their throats slit or being put into the scalding water to get their feathers ripped out and all this kind of stuff. And that's 180 million birds just in 1 year, just in the UK. So extremely, extremely bad all the world over. I actually recently had an exchange with a animal agriculture consultant from New Zealand. The guy makes his money basically dealing with like farming of lamb, sheeps, and other cattle and stuff like that. And he made the case that like, well, we don't use gas chambers for killing our pigs in New Zealand, and we're so much better. And I said, okay, let's look at the rates in New Zealand. And what I found was that the New Zealand code allows for 2 ineffective stuns of electrocution or bolt per animals. This is for large mammals, so this is for like cows and pigs and calves and stuff like that. So basically, for every 100 animals that you're shooting in the head with one of these captive bolt guns or electrocuting them, if you get 2 that don't work and you have to redo it, or that you notice like that you're stabbing them in the throat and then they're thrashing around because they're still alive and they haven't been properly stunned, as long as it's not more than 2 per every 100, it's fine. You don't even have to do an investigation. The equipment's deemed fine and good. If you get to above that, if you get 3 or more, then you are supposed to start an investigation. Now, obviously, even that is like, that's what the law says, but whether that actually gets done or not, that's another question. But even just assuming that everyone sticks to the law and they actually go and look at what the law says and they follow it, even with that, if you look at the number of pigs they kill in New Zealand each year, this chart shows you in thousands. So this is going back a few years here, but over the past like decade or whatever, you can see it varies between say like roughly 700,000, goes up to maybe maybe like 850 or so, 850,000, then it comes down to like just over 600,000, then it goes back to around 700,000. So let's just say 700,000 average, roughly, if you just draw the line in between here. So 700,000 pigs are killed in New Zealand every year, and of that means 2% are going to be ineffectively stunned and have their throats slit or bled to death or whatever because they're not stunned correctly. And this doesn't even take into account, like I say, all the exemptions for religious slaughter. So this is just straight up like regular standard slaughter, and even there, that means that there are 14,000 pigs in New Zealand that are getting killed every year that have ineffective stunning. So these people just are living in a fantasy world that these animals have a good life. They're living in a fantasy world that these animals are being killed in any kind of humane manner. And why? Well, because they want their conscience to be free and clear, because they think that it's humane. They think that what they're doing is okay. And I'm here to tell them no, and I'm sure all of you are here to tell them as well. And if you're watching this and you're not a vegan, then please do look into this stuff and don't take my word for it. Go and look at these studies and find out the truth. Now, we're getting near the end here. Thanks for sticking with me, everybody. Here we got... so she ends by saying that the dad should then cook something meaty that starts the saliva flowing, like roast lamb, so a baby, cheese, basically milk taken from babies, and crispy bacon. And what is that? Well, that's pretty much a class 1 carcinogen. So basically, she's now advocating that the dad feed that he should feed his daughter a known carcinogen. It's like, what is wrong with these people? I mean, I just did the stream about this not too long ago, where I talked about this new study that came out, which was then shown 2 days later to be coming from people who are funded by the meat industry and riddled with all sorts of problems of their analysis was done incorrectly and all this kind of stuff. And I did the live stream, check it out if you haven't seen it. And in that live stream, I actually talked about Joanna Blythman because she actually had an article that I was also replying to in that live stream, talking about how Scotland will go hungry if there are too many vegans. So check this live stream if you want to see my response about the cancer-causing nature of these processed foods. And then also check that specific part there, roughly around the 14-minute mark, to find out her ridiculous claims about Scotland going hungry. In a nutshell, it's way easier to produce food to be eaten directly by humans versus producing food that gets fed to animals and then you kill the animals and then you eat them. It's incredibly inefficient. So check this out, and then, yeah, just, I don't know, man. Like, this lady, Joanna Blythman, it's like, if you follow her on Twitter, it's like every other post is some keto nonsense, some low-carb nonsense, some anti-vegan nonsense, some, pro-dairy, pro-meat. Like, I can't imagine that she doesn't get paid, basically, to do this kind of stuff. Like, I just don't understand, like, how these people... She's not rooted in reality. Like, where is she getting this stuff? And, of course, nothing she says is substantiated by any kind of science or evidence. It's just, you just make, like, wild accusations, baseless statements, and then expect people to just emotionally, attach themselves to it and believe it. And this is what, vegans are accused of by anti-vegans, that we appeal to people's emotions. Yeah, we do appeal to people's emotions. We appeal to people's compassion, and we appeal to people's reason and sense. And if you look at the things that I've shown you, you're going to see that they're true. I'm not appealing to emotion when I show the stats on the stunning rates or the the investigations that have been done on these farms, showing you the conditions that these animals endure and live through, so that they can then go and suffer a horrific death, so that the people like her can give cancer-causing foods to their children and family. It's just extremely upsetting. And if you want to see the debunking of that claim that Scotland would go hungry, then watch my other live stream, which I did here, where I reviewed the study that showed if the UK went and abandoned animal agriculture and they switched to plant-based farming, they would actually reduce 9 years worth of their CO2 emissions of their current level, and they would be able to rewild huge areas of the UK, and they would be self-sufficient food-wise. I mean, these carnivore, anti-vegan kind of people, they're always harping on about, like, but you're getting your avocados from wherever. First of all, vegans aren't the only people eating avocados. That's the first thing. Second of all, it's not like it's not impossible for even a place like the UK to produce all their own food, but it is impossible if they're wasting all the land they have right now to produce animals, and that's what's happening. So, watch this stream if you guys haven't seen it yet, and yeah, check it out. I think this Joanna person's probably a paid shill. I don't know. I haven't had time to investigate her more, but I wouldn't be surprised if she's getting paid by the meat industry to write these kind of ridiculous claims. And then let's just finish out the her little advertisement here. So, would she glue herself to the oven door and stage a one-girl animal rebellion? I mean, how much like anger and I don't even know like what the right word is, but like animosity do you feel when you see something like this? Like, how little regard does she have for somebody that is theoretically, like your own like child? Because the whole thing is that the dad in the commercial is actually, he even admits, I love eating meat. And then he says, but I love my daughter more. And so he's making a change to accommodate his child because he loves their child. Do you get that feeling when you read this from Joanna? Not me. To me, I get like a scoffing, like, I don't even know what words to use, but it's like she's looking down on the daughter and just being like this arrogant jerk. Like, it's very upsetting. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, maybe she doesn't even have kids and she's just trying to be kind of like smart here or whatever, but I don't know. More likely, she'd devour it gladly because it smells and tastes great, and she knows there's no way that Dad would offer Tesco vegan sausages as an alternative. And it's like, so it's great. So this is really her only argument. It smells great and it tastes great. She's got nothing else to stand on. That is her only argument. That is the only argument that any anti-vegan, any carnivore, any person who wants to argue veganism has. Yeah, it tastes great and I don't care. It's the apathy, and it's the I don't care and I put my taste pleasure above everything else. That's what she's got. And then, and she knows there's no way Dad would offer the vegan sausages as an alternative. Yeah, if you want to be a jerk like Joanna, then yeah. Like, if you don't care about your kids, then yeah. If you don't want to, have them feel loved and welcome in your home, then yeah. You can just tell them, put up or shut up, and that's it. So she says, it's a parent's job to safeguard their children's long-term welfare, not cave in to modish, ill-informed, potentially dangerous demands from young minds bombarded with propaganda. Well, I would just turn that right around and say, she's advocating giving the kids a class 1 carcinogen for food. So if there's anybody that's ill-informed, I would say it's her. And if there's potential danger, then it's, feeding your kids what she's recommending. So that's my take on this. I don't know if anybody has any questions or if I missed anything. Hopefully this is thorough enough. Maybe it's too thorough. I don't know if anybody will watch this long. But I was just really, really upset when I read this thing. I mean, it's just an absolutely ridiculous bunch of nonsense. I mean, it's like, I don't know if there's a single thing in there that makes sense or is even just not an outright lie. I think the only thing that's truthful in there is that, yeah, she thinks it tastes good and that it's, justified because of that. But yeah. So anyway, guys, that's all I have. Hopefully this was interesting to people, and if not, then sorry. And hopefully you guys liked it. If anybody has anything, questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to head off to bed. And I guess maybe I'll just end with a plug for myself. I said in the last live stream, if anybody wants a Q&A, drop some questions in the comments. And I've been really bad about replying to comments, so I do apologize about that. But I'll try and catch up on all the comments pretty soon. And basically, if anybody does have questions, then just let me know and drop a question, and I'll reply to that either on the upcoming live stream or try to reply just in the direct comments field. So anyway, that's all I got. Hope everybody's good. Have a good night. Thanks for being on, and see you soon. Bye.